Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to the Improv Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dayna Gowan. I help speakers to find the fun in public speaking, and I help everyone to enjoy the improvised moments that come up when you're speaking on and off stage. And I'm so excited that you're here today because we have an awesome episode and topic. Today we are focusing on humor and how humor can reduce stress, improve overall health, increase productivity at work, boost resilience, and overall provide a more fun and enjoyable life, which we're all about, right? And I love this topic because I have a presentation that I've been working on for a little bit called Finding the Humor and Joy in a Stressful World. And we'll get into it, but today's speaker does all the research behind humor and why it can help reduce stress and do all the beneficial things it does. So I'm so excited to jump into it. If you're new, joining for the first time, welcome. The goals of this podcast are 1, to help people understand the benefits of improvisation and applied improvisation and humor. Now we'll add humor to that. 2, to demonstrate how improv and humor shows up in all aspects of our lives. 3, to inspire you to try new things, get out of your head and judgment zones, and find creative outlets and passions and overall just things that light you up that can help you. And our special guest today is going to bring a wealth of knowledge and also humor, I think, to this podcast. No pressure there, Mike. So without further ado, let me introduce our amazing guest today, Dr. Michael Cundall Jr. Dr. Mike is a university professor, researcher, author, and speaker based in Browns Summit, North Carolina, which is really close to Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm still learning my North Carolina geography here. Dr. Mike's company is called Mirth Management, which helps individuals and organizations build engagement, creativity, and resilience by embracing humor as a vital leadership and well-being skill. He has presented to the U.S. Army, healthcare professionals, educators, business leaders, and more, all with one central message, that humor is an untapped resource that can transform the way we lead, connect, and thrive. He has a TEDx talk called Laughter and Levity, Why You Should Be Smiling More, which has inspired more than 60,000 viewers to see humor as a pathway to better health and human connection. He has 3 books out. 1 is The Humor Hack, 2, Humor and the Common Good, which came out in August. And he'll explain more about these books, but that one is more like academia focused. And then the 3rd one just came out in mid-November 2025. And that one is called Putting Humor to Work, which connects the science of humor with strategies for happier and more resilient workplaces. I plan on purchasing that one after this interview. Dr. Mike has his PhD in philosophy and the sciences from the University of Cincinnati. When he's not researching or teaching and doing all the things, you'll find him woodworking, cooking, and spending time with his wife, 3 sons, and 2 dogs. His approach to life is curious, thoughtful, and joy-filled, which embodies the very principles that he teaches and talks about. And he truly believes and shows up that humor and happiness are essential ingredients for well-being. We are in for such a treat today. Please welcome Dr. Mike Cundall. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you. Great to be here. Really appreciate it. And when you put it all like that, it's like, I don't know if you ever remember the Seinfeld episode where George, he says, if you took everything that I did in my life and you reduced it to a day, it's pretty decent. So thank you for that. It's nice to hear those things about what I've done. And it's been a fun road and I've enjoyed most of it, I have to say.
I love that. Good Seinfeld reference. I actually haven't heard that one. That one's a good Seinfeld reference there. For our listeners, I asked Dr. Mike to be on today because I was watching a webinar. I think this was back in October. Dr. Mike did a webinar for the Wellbeing Think Tank, which is a fantastic organization for employee well-being and employee productivity and just overall employee culture. So please check that out. But they had Dr. Mike on to talk about, the title was The Restorative Powers of Laughter, Humor, and Mirth for Thriving Workplaces. And the webinar was excellent. Just as Dr. Mike was talking, I was like, oh my gosh, I got to have him on. I got to invite him to the podcast. And so I emailed you right away, Mike, right after it ended. I was like, please come on the podcast. I would love to have you, would love to feature you. So thank you for saying yes and to the offer.
Well, you're quite welcome. And yes and is one of the most helpful things you can do. I use it in my classes quite a bit because some of my students, when one student will bring up a point, they almost automatically go into critique mode where they go into, yeah, but. I'm like, no. Let's do yes and for a while. Take their thought and amplify it. And then we can do critique later because we're kind of trained anymore to kind of look at something and critique it and find the problems rather than kind of looking at something and finding what's the strength and kind of working within that, build up the strength. And I find that yes and technique to be not just wonderful in improv, which of course it is, but also, helpful in so many other places. And it changes your mindset and how you look at things. And you're like, yes, and it's more affiliative. It's more, the word that's escaping me, where you're working. It's conducive to kind of working together.
Collaborative.
Collaborative. Yeah. There's the word.
Yeah.
There's the word.
Words escape me all the time. And it's like, I find a word, but it's like, that's not the word I was looking for. Yeah. I love that you use that approach because I feel like students and employees and just in every capacity, we're mirroring what we see and we're seeing that everything's being critiqued. So we think we have to show up with this yes, but mindset or approach and like be able to find like what's wrong with things. And it's like, yeah, yes. And like, can we just show up and be connected and collaborative and just see what the possibilities are before we slash it down and break it down?
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially in a learning environment, in a classroom where, people are I think one of my jokes when I start the class, I said, what's the first step of being good at anything? And they're like, practice. I was like, no, sucking at it. Because if you weren't, if you were already good at it, then you don't need to be here. Like the expectation is that you get better over time, right? And so this yes and starts from the spot of we're trying to get to better. And if we start with that yes and sort of approach, if we think about collaborative kind of development and that sort of thing, it's much easier to get there. And people feel less worried about, I'm going to say the wrong thing. And especially in a philosophy class where lots of students this is the first time they're exposed to it and these sorts of, ways of thinking and this sort of thing. So, and they're already in college, so they're worried about a grade. I really want it to be that the space where you can say things that are wrong and that's expected, because if you weren't wrong, again, why would you be here, sort of thing.
I love that. I was in college many, many years ago, and I wish the teachers had that kind of approach or that kind of pep talk in the beginning, because you do show up wanting to fulfill a certain expectation and judgments and stuff. So I love that you bring that into your class, even on the first day. That's really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we'll get into it more, but how you teach philosophy now and all the things you do. And so I want to hear more about your journey. And I read in your bio that doing your formal research into humor began while working on your dissertation on autism, which is maybe two different things or so. But how did that play out, and how and why did you become a quote unquote humorist?
So I was doing my dissertation research on autism, and I was focusing on, back at the time, and it's a popular theory called theory of mind. And there was this idea that persons who have autism lack a fully developed theory of mind. And I was also reading quite separately just a book that was kind of science stories, stories of research and this sort of thing. And they were talking about humor. And I was reading that little chapter, and I'd read some stuff about Temple Grandin by Oliver Sacks. And Temple Grandin, in her kind of, when she was describing when she would walk into a room and she would hear people laugh, she didn't understand what was going on. It was a foreign signal to her. And persons, neurotypicals are going to walk into a room, and when people are laughing, they're going to know something funny is going on, and then they're going to search out for that funny thing. But this was obviously something difficult for a person with autism to tap into. To her, it was just this strange behavior without explanation. And I started thinking with those kind of three things kind of bubbling around in my brain, that if we did some sort of research, did some sort of experimentation where we tracked how persons with autism responded to humor and what humor was, we might be able to sort more clearly what the disorder was. And my dissertation committee, I remember when I brought them this idea, they looked at me and they said, "That's great. That's really interesting. You don't do that here." And I looked at them kind of strange, like, what do you mean not do it? You're like, I'm supposed to be doing research. And they're like, no, that's going to be a research project that you start when you start at your university. And it's probably going to get you 2, 3, 4 publications, which is likely going to be what gets you tenure. So wait. And I was like, oh, thanks guys for looking out for me. And, but I just ended up in a space where I just never got a chance to do that sort of research. And then I ended up getting into being an administrator for universities, specifically honors programs and colleges. And I was doing all that sort of work. And I didn't get a chance to really pursue it much further. I'd written a little bit on some general topics on humor. And then when I moved to North Carolina A&T as the director of their honors program, I started hearing at the time, we need to get all these students leadership. The problem that we're seeing is that they need more leadership, and everything was leadership. If there was a problem, then we needed to get people more leadership training. And if you're a philosopher and you've been trained like I've been trained, when one thing is the explanation for all of our ills, you immediately become skeptical, right? Because if everything's leadership, then nothing is, right? It's like, well, what do you mean here? And so I was kicking around in that research and trying to figure out what I could do for students. And it was kind of a lingering thought. Well, why am I not seeing a whole lot of, research? Why are people not talking about humor in leadership? Because I know that people that I've worked with or in places that I've worked where humor and laughter was present, it was a far better experience, a far better place to work, a better environment. Even if I wasn't paid necessarily as much as the other place where it wasn't filled with enjoyment and laughter and all that sort of thing. And so I just started kind of looking at that. And when I stepped away from doing that sort of doing administrative work, there was my new research program. I was going to start looking at humor and thinking about kind of these more applied ways, because I saw all this research that was out there, and there just weren't a lot of people talking about how you could do it. Because one of the things, you probably know is, and you've heard this before, you say, well, how do I know what jokes to tell and all this sort of thing? And then people will say, well, just read the room. And my research partner, Dr. Kelly, she hates that. She's a communication studies professor. And she said, it's so vague. It's so unhelpful, because what does reading the room mean? What am I supposed to be picking up on? What are the behaviors? What are the cues and this sort of thing? And so we started really trying to figure out ways, especially when we were working on our first kind of joint project, on how healthcare providers, healthcare professionals could use and understand how humor works both effectively and ineffectively in the healthcare space. And specifically, we're trying to develop ways that would not only elucidate what was going on in a particular case, but then how you could take those particular lessons and place them and use them else. And so here we're trying to really give some specifics to, this is how you read a room. And the other thing that I do in my humor hack book is I have this whole chapter where I just talk about, if you want to know what sort of humor to use with what sort of people and when, just think of humor as a house. And when you meet someone, you're at their front door and you don't know a lot about them. So what you share is pretty restricted. Well, humor has to work on shared beliefs, and you got to have something to share, or else they're not going to get the joke, right? But when you walk up to someone's, front door, you share the weather, you share the geography, right? So make weather jokes, right? No one's going to get offended by a weather joke. I have one from a student years ago. It was really hot when we lived in Arkansas and worked in Arkansas my first couple of years out of grad school. The student came in and he just said, "This weather is just disrespectful." And it was just such a great way to describe it, right? And I've kept it in my pocket. Perfect. And I'll use right. It's perfect. I keep it in my pocket. And so here you can trot that out, right? Do you? So I lived in Cincinnati, and the joke in Cincinnati was, we knew, with the state flower of Ohio was the orange barrel, right? Because in the spring, that's when all the orange barrels came out to start doing all the highway maintenance, right? So you can,
Okay.
those are things that you can joke
Nice.
about with almost anyone. And if you think about, okay, well, if I've now been invited into, I don't know, their family room, well, I probably know a whole lot more about them. We share a lot more. So my jokes, like I can make jokes about their job, or if it was a parent who came to the door and I saw two kids and a vacuum that, had been just shut off, I could just look at them and say, are you as tired as I was when I was a parent and just, bleary eyed all the time? Right. So this notion of thinking of how and where you can use humor as a house and how far you've made it into the house is a good way to kind of give people a sense of what's available to joke. Because as you go in that house, what you share is increased. And so hence the availability of material is also increased, right? And, if it's in the dining room, it's more formal. If it's in the family room, it's less formal. If you're in the kitchen, you're making beer jokes, right? It becomes a really helpful analogy that I push people to use. And these were the sorts of things that I was trying to do, where I was taking my work as a philosopher, as a researcher, and showing here are some really direct and practical benefits from this work that happens in the university, but can have clear benefits for people who are not in academia, who are wanting to say, well, how could it help me? And a lot of what I've done, in two of the books, The Humor Hack and Putting Humor to Work, is to try and answer those sorts of questions for people who aren't academics.
I love the applications of your work too, and just in doing the research and like the benefits of it and how it helps, but then applying it to people's workplaces, because we don't live in a vacuum or a silo. Like we're very multifaceted. We have to engage with lots of different people too. And so, yeah, like how can you apply this work in your communication styles at work, in your communication styles to your family, to your friends? Like, I love the application piece and the strategies piece of it, because it's one thing to do research and be like, it's good for you. And then the second piece is like, but how? Like, read the room. But how? How do you read the room? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like the other kind of line for speaking, like, just be yourself. But how?
Have you met me? I don't want to be me. I want to be someone that people like. Yeah, like
right.
Being yourself and all those sorts of things. And then, a lot of times, and you've probably heard this quite a bit, is, well, make a joke at your own expense, make a little self-deprecatory,
yes.
cut. But there's research out there that shows that, for me, as a white male who's educated, who has my superpower, I joke, is I have all the privileges, right? I'm white, I'm male, I'm heterosexual, I have educational, economic, all the privileges. But if you're not if you're, say, a female in a more largely male-dominated area, and you make a self-deprecating joke, that might not go the way you want it to, right? It might reinforce that, hey, you're not as good, right? And we shouldn't. And these are things that you have to be aware of. It's not a hard and fast rule that, if you're a woman and you're in a more male-dominated, workspace, you can't do it. But what you have to do is say, how close am I to these folks? Do they know me well enough to know that we're just cutting up? Or would they think that I'm, actually have this kind of toxic view of myself, right? And this is where the academic research is really helpful, because they start to uncover these sorts of things. A lot of people will come up to me and say things like, well, is humor good, say, for public relations or for sales? Or how is humor good in political work and this sort of thing? And most people want me to say, well, it's good. But the problem is that it is good in particular ways, right? We know that, so to some of the stuff that you work on, what is the most important thing when you're out there giving a talk? There are two things that you want with any message. You need them to you need for your audience to hear you, and you need them to remember you. Yep. Humor is great at making people pay attention, and it's really good for helping people to remember your message. Now, if you want them to do, the call to action stuff that we all who are now trying to sell our stuff, it's like, oh, here's what I can give you. Now, the call to action is short or answer is hire me and pay me money so I can go do these things. Humor doesn't seem to be as strong in getting people to change their behavior, right? But that's only because research has started to look at this over the past 30 to 40 years, and they've done enough research where we can feel confident that it seems to be okay at a couple of things and not okay here. So if you are asking me if humor is good in the workforce, do you want to create a more resilient workforce? Yes. Do you want to feel closer to the people that you work with and seem approachable as a leader? Absolutely. Does it make them more creative? Yes. Here's how it can help you in very specific ways, right? It's not a silver bullet that fixes all your ills.
Right. Which I think that's the case for a lot of things. I think sometimes we take things into extremes, and it's the middle ground is kind of the fine line or the balance, right? I think of that with authenticity. I feel like, at least on LinkedIn, there's like a battle on authenticity right now. It's like, you used to show up as your authentic self, and now it's like, don't show up as your authentic self. And it's like, I think somewhere in the middle is where we can show up and feel comfortable. The key piece there that a lot of people miss is the comfortability of being yourself. And so I think that goes with humor too, of like, you don't want to try out your 5-minute stand-up routine at work, but if a mistake is made, or if you can find a way to have a little humorous joke or anecdote, and it feels natural for you to like add it, go ahead, and then if it, I don't know. Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm like, there's a difference between humor and comedy. Humor is some of the stuff that you and I have been doing through here. Now, since you obviously have done, stand up and you have your tight five, it's different. And some of what I'm doing now is you sent me what you're going to talk about. I know the things that I want to talk about because it's stuff I've covered before. So I have in my head this sort of rough sketch or I don't want to say sketch, but I have these kind of talking points that I know I can, if we go over here, then I can work this. And if we go over here, I can work this in. Right. And so in a sense, some of them are canned, but then the yes and thing was just not something I had thought of until you brought it up. And then I was like, oh, right. I use it here. So I think that's getting to your point of be yourself, but you can't just walk in and, you can't overstep your bounds. You can't take over everything with your 5-minute bit because that's not what's happening. Go do your 5-minute bit at a comedy show. That's where you're supposed to do that. But here, be ready with your wit and your things that you find funny and bring them to the table and share them with other people so that they can enjoy them just the same as you.
Yes. I love that. Like, bring your wit, your joy, like what makes you you, like bring that to the table, which I know is another key piece of leadership in the workplace, is like feeling comfortable to do that. And that's another discussion for another time. But I do want to mention another kind of sage old advice that I've heard too with speaking and communications is if you're not funny, don't try to be funny. And I feel like that, again, leans to the comedy side and not the humor side. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, everybody's funny. Everyone finds stuff that they laugh at. Now, I'm not asking you to go out there and be the next George Carlin of your particular, job space. No one really wants that.
Right.
But there are things that you find funny. Share them. And they don't have to be like that example where I said that my student said this weather is just disrespectful. That's great. I love it and I've kept it with me, but I also want to share it with the people around me because I think it's funny and I think they will enjoy it too. And the other thing that happens there, which is really important for leadership, for connecting with people, is that if they see you laughing at it, if they see you enjoying humor, it's almost as good and as effective. Some might say it is as effective as using humor, right? Because it humanizes you in the eyes of the people, right? I may not get your jokes, but I do appreciate the fact that you're laughing at something and that you're enjoying it. And we value that in people who are around us. So yeah, maybe you're not supposed to make the jokes that, maybe you have a really absurdist or a dark sense of humor. So yeah, probably not going to go over well in a norm, but doesn't mean that you shouldn't, share and enjoy. So yeah, you don't do comedy. I'm like, never do comedy. Do humor, right? Find the funny things in the world and play around, because the other thing that happens is when you're looking for humorous things, when you're trying to find the funny, when you're trying to find the things that don't fit and make them funny and bring out the weirdness so that we can enjoy it, you're actively more engaged mentally than you would be if you're just kind of sitting there running through whatever. And that's one of the things that the other benefit that humor has is that if someone in a talk that I was giving made a joke or made a smart aleck comment about something that I had said 20 minutes earlier, well, guess what? They remember what I said 20 minutes earlier. So boss, don't necessarily think that the people making a joke about what you said is a bad thing, because what it shows is they remembered. Now, what they remembered and how they remembered is you can start to work on that sort of thing. But like, there's that, I'm thinking it's like, but you do remember me, right? For the wrong reasons, but you got, and if you're trying to get remembered, now you got to figure out how to get them to remember you for the right reasons. So it's these kind of stepped processes that you learn and you figure out as you in a sense play around in that space.
Yeah, I think back to, working in corporate environments and the corporate work I've done, and just all the leaders who have had more of a humor approach. It made them more approachable too. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I would never call them, and I would tell this to them too. I would never say you're the funniest person I've ever met, but I would say you were so approachable and caring. And those leaders are the people who I still talk to today, even though I don't work for them or with them anymore. It's those approachable people.
And it makes you, the person who approaches them, less susceptible to burnout. Now, that's actually research that I've done with my friend, Dr. Kelly, that was the big one. And number one predictor of someone not, of someone leaving a place is burnout. So you can reduce it by up to 15% and you don't have to be using jokes to make people laugh. If they just see you as enjoying humor, your point was like, you're approachable because, you laugh too, right? It humanizes us. You're not this person that's way up here and off in the hierarchy. It brings that level down, right? And hierarchies can be problematic. Here's another little interesting bit. But if you come from a culture where hierarchy is more tolerated, then that sort of thing isn't going to work as well, right? In a more egalitarian society, that's going to be more important. So again, how do you read the room? What do you know? You got to learn all these things as you go. And we also can sense that, right? I had a colleague at A&T. She was very formal. You would not have put us together because I'm deeply informal, Dr. Mike. And I tell my students, I'm like, when you graduate, you can call me Mike. Like, that's only required when we're here because I'm not you and there needs to be some sort of distinction. And I do like to be reminded that I did all this work for a degree that grants me that title. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you earned it.
I earned it. But the interesting part is that, Dr. Rashid is hyper formal. And when I met her, I could tell, like, you could just feel how formal she was. And it was never mean or cranky or grumpy about it. She was just formal. And people kind of warned me, like, Mike, this is, you're Mike, and people, she's probably not. And I knew probably by our second or third meeting, I said, Dr. Rashid, I said, you can call me Mike. And she's like, nope, you've earned it. That's what, and I said, I figured that's what you would say, but I wanted to make sure that I offered it because I offer it to everybody. And I'm perfectly fine with Dr. Cundall. Like, that's great. I would have felt bad if I didn't offer it to you. And she and I became very, very tight, right? Even though we had very, very different sorts of approaches. I'm more informal. She's more formal. And there was, this acceptance of the differences. And I learned so much from her. A&T is an HBCU and I'm a white guy. So there were things that I clearly wasn't going to understand before I got there. And people like her helped me learn as I got more and more involved and, learned more about the culture.
Yeah. It's a great story. Just icebreakers are kind of a funny term, but it does break the ice of like just getting more acceptance, right? Like just kind of like leveling the ground and be like, hey, I understand you don't want to, and that's fine. I just wanted to offer. I love that. Yeah. And that's just communication too at its best. You were talking a little bit about the benefits of humor too. And so I'm curious, and you can make this as sciencey or as short as you want to, but like, what is going on in our bodies and brains when we are laughing or engaging with humor? And so not comedy piece, but just like humor in general. Like, we know that it lights us up. We know that it makes life more enjoyable, but what's going on in our bodies that's doing that for us?
Okay, so I'm just going to sidestep part of the question by saying, go please read chapter 2 or 3 in Humor in the Common Good, because I spend, I think it might be 10,000 words. I don't think it's quite that much, but it's a good chunk of words just going through the health benefits of of humor and laughter. And, and your body doesn't care if you're laughing at comedy or if you're laughing at the funny joke that someone made, or if you've ever heard of yoga laughter yoga.
I haven't done it. Yeah,
So,
it's on my list for sure.
So laughter yoga, just as a quick sidebar, is a yoga practice where they just get you laughing, and they don't even have humor prompts. They just get people to start laughing. And, sometimes, method actors will mimic the bodily motions and the bodily behaviors of, say, crying, where you short, choppy breaths and you're huddled over, or you make the mean face, right? But if you do that long enough, the body starts to then go, I'm angry, or I'm laughing, or I'm sad, but there isn't a sadness prompt, right? It's the body going through its motions that are concomitant with the feeling, with the emotion of sadness or whatever. And they found that the studies show, your body, you get all the same benefits from yoga type laughter, forced laughter is one way people talk about it, as you would get from actual laughter or mirthful laughter that's the result of a humor or enjoying something like that. So pretty much what you can do in a short answer to this, without getting kind of super, in the weeds of it, if there's been research that has been shown that X, Y, and Z happened in your brain when you are in a state of eustress or good stress, or where you're not feeling distress, those same sorts of markers are going to come up when you are laughing or enjoying humor. You're going to see decreased levels in stress responding hormones, or in hormones or blood factors or neurochemicals that are associated with stress are going to be reduced, and ones that ameliorate against stress or deal with stress are going to be increased. We also know that, we talked about this kind of in the run up to the show, that the heart rate variability, your heart rate variability is actually increased when you are enjoying humor. And it's again, heart rate variability, as we mentioned, is kind of this weird thing. You think, no, I want my heart rate to be stable. No, increased heart rate variability is a good thing. The rest and the eat and rest part of your autonomic or your nervous system is activated more when you're laughing and enjoying humor than the fight or flight one, right? Because we're relaxed. The tongue's not on the roof of your mouth. It's let go. And then there's just, if you don't want to necessarily have kind of the checklist of all the things from your blood to your brain to your overall, all these, things that, most people just aren't going to keep with them on a day to day. One of the reasons it feels good, one of the reasons we enjoy it, is because it's beneficial. There's this great quote from Norman Cousins that I love, and I won't get it exactly right, but it goes kind of to the point that we, especially in the United States, we tend to fix problems. We find things that are wrong, and then we go and fix them. And then we don't do anything about it until something's broken. And what Cousins wanted to point out was humor and laughter, and then the beneficent emotions, right? Like love and grace and enjoyment. They're not just good because they feel good. They're good because they have these good consequences for us. And if you take it in a sort of evolutionarily sort of inspired way, the reasons that they feel good are because they do these good things for us. So when you're laughing with someone, you feel a kinship, right? You're sharing a joke. So I'll bet within the past couple of hours, you've sent some funny meme to one of your friends over social media. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
It happens.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this is the term now is called, it's digital pebbling, right? We share these things with people because we want them to enjoy them the same way that we enjoyed them. Mm-hmm. We want that. And it's a form of kindness, right? And that enjoyment and that sharing of enjoyment, not only do I enjoy watching you laugh and it makes me feel good that you find the stuff that I laugh at, I do enjoy, it's a kindness to help people laugh and have a better day, right? Because you recognize that basic need that we have to have fun. And we know that when you share laughter with people, it's very hard to be angry at them, right? There's this great line from The Simpsons where, Homer Simpson's done something bad, and of course Marge is mad at him. And then he says something that's funny. He's like, haha, you laughed. I'm not in trouble anymore. And then he runs away, right? And speaking as a husband who's gotten into those sorts of, I have used this tack to, I don't know if it's unfairly, but I've used it. But again, the idea that you're enjoying things, it becomes hard to be in those spaces where you're angry or frustrated or this sort of thing. And humor and laughter have just an absolutely rock solid way of almost making every bit of unhappiness, of stress just disappear. And it doesn't make it go away completely. But what I have noticed is that, and lots of people who've, consistent exposure to stress has long-term negative consequences, is when you find ways to interrupt those kind of stress arcs or those cascade of stressful emotions. If you interrupt them with laughter, it cuts. Think of it as a river. It's a dam in the river. The river is still going to flow downhill, but it's not going to flow downhill with as much force. And so the laughter and the humor become ways to kind of shut down that really hard-hitting cascade of negative emotions. And this is what I do. So when I tell bosses, I'm like, if you're going to go in, ask your people, what's the thing that they'd love to get rid of about their job? Don't say that you can fix it, but ask what they'd love to get rid of. Or what's the thing that makes them really unhappy about their job? And I've talked to lots of people, and it tends to be something that is, you got to do it. It's kind of a repetitive process. And so most people I talk to are like billing at the end of the month. I hate doing that, right? Because I got to go through everything. I got to check. And I was like, so here's what you do. Take whatever number of steps that you have to do to get from A to B, and then parse it up. And then just but you got to be consistent and you got to be good about it. Go take a stopping point. Go watch your funny video or go see your silly meme. Take 2 minutes and then come back. Same amount of time, 2 minutes. And what happens is that negative cascade that builds up behind something that's no fun is interrupted. And you no longer have that. It's what I call it gets to the bottom of your list. And then, I didn't get to it. And it gets to the bottom of the list the next day, and then the next day, and then the next.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But if you interrupt it, so for me, it's grading. Grading. So I have to make, myself take every 8 or so papers or tests. You've got to go take a break because you're getting grumpy, which is not good for your students because you're going to be more critical and you don't need to be, and you don't want to, and you're not going to enjoy this, and you need to get it done. So we know that humor and laughter can break up those sorts of things. So this is a way to both use humor to, in a sense, increase productivity, but also just not make your day or your job so bad, right? A nice practical way. I've done it with my students, but they all come back to me and they said, yeah, we're just not really good about not stopping after 2 minutes.
You know what? I was having some but thinking a little bit. I was like, yeah, but I then find myself scrolling on my phone.
Now I've learned how long it takes water to go down a giraffe's throat on YouTube. 2 hours later. Right.
Yes. And you learn what works for you, right? And like what your humor kind of like sidestep can be. And for me, it's probably not picking up the phone because otherwise I'll just get like immersed in it. But yeah, like what's something you can enjoy? What I've learned recently about myself in this shift from like the corporate world to now working for myself. And I worked from home before, but now I work from home, but I don't know. I'm finding I want to explore and like get out more. And somebody gave me the advice recently to like, when I have to do my hard stuff, like finances and tracking spending and invoices, or maybe doing podcast edits or something that just I view as hard, she's like, go somewhere and do it. Like go to a coffee shop, like be out in the world. That's not humor, but it's still like connection. And that's like a big priority for me is connection. And so if I can get that while doing the hard thing, it's easier to do.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I called the first book The Humor Hack, is because you're using humor to hack your ways of doing things to get them better. Right. And there's also the other, it's just, people laugh or shake their head at me when they realize I was like, but it's also the humor hack because I'm a hack. Right. Like that's my type of humor. And if I can throw that in there and they're like, why are you making fun of yourself? You wrote a book. I'm like, because why wouldn't you? Like, that's just good. That's a good thing to me. Right.
Yeah. We should never take ourselves too seriously. But you're right to that point. Like when you have more privileges, it's easier. When you were saying that a while ago, see, it's still memorable, right? What you said earlier. I was thinking of a speaker I know who is very self-deprecating, but it's very funny and like works for him. And I remember wanting to emulate that style, but it never quite like worked for me. And so I think from the public speaking communication lenses, you find the style that works for you. And I know you've talked about like affiliative humor, and that is different from self-deprecating humor, right? Like, can you speak a little bit to those kind of different types of humor?
Right. So this comes from a guy who did some work, Rod Martin, very famous psychologist, Canadian fellow, really famous in humor research. I can look up and probably find his book and just, yeah, there it is. And he, in the early 2000s, he started doing some research on types of humor. And I'm trying to be very careful to point out to people that when we're talking about humor types, this isn't like absurdism or, slapstick or kind of comedy types or like where your mind might go. This is more of a sort of a functional description of humor and how humor works given certain social situations. So there were four. There's self-deprecatory humor, there's affiliative, there's bullying humor, and so the self-effacing, I'm going to miss one of them, but two of them are largely positive. And one of the two that I'm missing is one of these. I know their definitions. I don't know their names right off the top of my head. So the first one is I use humor to help me cope with the world, right? So it's a way that I use to kind of deal with stress. And then and the one that's affiliative is that I use humor with people around me to help them deal with stress or to help us deal with stress, right? So here it's kind of the functional goal of the use of the humor. What are you trying to do with it? Now, kind of self-deprecatory humor, basically they just say it's making fun of yourself, and they are a little less optimistic about the use of self-deprecatory humor than I am. I still tend to find it more helpful, but this might be because I like it. I that's one of the things. I love self-deprecatory humor for whatever reason. And then there's bullying humor where you're using humor to ridicule or to make fun of, right? Where they're laughing at, not laughing with or laughing near. And not all forms of teasing where you're making fun of somebody are this kind of bullying humor. We're actually really good. Studies have shown about knowing when someone who's a bully and their use of humor is bullying humor versus when it's sort of pro-social. So think about the people that you tease. You tease people, you don't, you won't tease me yet, but maybe at the end of 2 hours of this, you'll make some sort of little shot. But because we've established this kind of baseline rapport, now public speakers can use self-deprecatory humor to kind of initiate, and I do this a lot in class. And very early on is I will tease, and there'll be kind of very low level, low stakes teases, but it introduces that I'm in that space that I like to play, because teasing is a kind of a play. And then after a while, after several weeks, usually about 6 weeks, my students will start to punch back a little bit. Now it's really they're soft punches, but it creates this kind of, we enjoy coming here because we know that we can play around and we can have fun, but we're also learning. And what researchers have found relative to kind of humor and learning is that humor can either help a person remember if you make a joke about the content, or if you just make the overall environment humorous, they enjoy the space, right? And both are conducive to helping you learn whatever material you're after, right? Maybe they weren't the greatest teacher, but they created a space that I enjoyed coming to, so I learned better because of the space, not because of the jokes. And then there are teachers who are just really good at writing jokes about their content. I have a friend he writes jokes about his logic, and I'm like, he writes jokes. Like he's like, I write them out. It's like, oh, I'm way too lazy for that. I just make smart. Smart, comments about things that we're doing. So one of the ones that I love to get students on is they'll come to me and they'll say, can I ask you a question? And I'll say, you just did. And I will completely move past them. Oh. And they'll stop and they'll be like, what? And I was like, well, can I ask you another question? I was like, you just did. And I'll go right. And yeah. And and they're like, and they get frustrated. And of course I'm smiling and I'm kind of making exaggerated movements to indicate that I'm being playful. But what that does for me is that I said, this also is a very interesting philosophical sidebar, because when you say, can I ask you a question? You're not actually asking me a question. You're using the language to be polite, to indicate that you are going to ask me a question. That isn't really a question. That's just a, hey, that's just a marker. But we don't like to say to people, so I'm going to ask you a question now, because that feels very
for this. Yeah.
Right. That's like a hammer hitting you. I said, so yeah, I play with it, but I play with it to point out this interesting fact about language use and, how you can think about things. Right. And because the other students have seen me tease this student, they're enjoying it too, because it's got playful space, but the lesson gets driven home by the joke. And then the joke and the teasing also creates a more playful space where the students, we enjoy coming to class. Like, philosophy is not going to be something I do on a regular basis, but you always made it fun. And that's been my kind of baseline goal when I teach, especially intro level type philosophy, which is most of my teaching.
Yeah. Like, just making it enjoyable and that they want to come to class. Like, that's a huge win. I mean, especially you're up against so many things, so many distractions now in the college world. Like, they've got their phones, computers out. I mean, for me, when I was in college a decade plus ago, like it was the newspaper with Sudoku, right? Like, that's what we would be doing if we were really distracted in class. So you have so many distractions going on. And social media, there are watches too, like, that get messages on their wrists.
Yep.
So the fact that you can get them to focus, pay attention, ask questions, enjoy the content, learn. I mean, that's a huge win. A huge win.
Yep. And it, and I probably increase my participation rate by about 10%. It's not where I want it to be, but it is one of the things I also tell the students. I said, have you all ever worked somewhere where no one was joking and laughing and everyone didn't want to be there? And they're like, yeah. I said, how was that? And they're like, it was awful. I said, would you go back? And they said, no. I said, so if you come into class and you treat it like that space, remember, I'm here too. And while I do have these letters at the end of my name, it doesn't mean I'm not susceptible to just, if it's bad for everybody, like, I'm not going to work as hard. You're not going to work as hard. It's going to be, we can create the space in a way that makes it good for all of us, or we can make the space in a way that makes it bad for all of us. I'm much more interested in the former, and I'm pretty sure you are too. And here I'm just kind of talking as a professor going, you've experienced being in a bad workspace. You've experienced places where there's no humor and no laughter and no enjoyment. We can make these things disappear. So let's do that. And then we're here again, co-creating space. And one of the things that I've really started to focus on, especially in the past 6 months, as I've wrapped up the writing project and this sort of thing, a lot of people look at humor, and I understand why this is so, is we use humor to treat problems. And I want to really start having people think that having a proper level of humor and laughter in your day to day is like eating your fruits and vegetables, right? It's part of an overall sort of preventive health care, right? Because we know that if you have humor and laughter, you are more resilient. So just start with it on the front end, and you're not going to have to do what we do. One of my students, I wish I had this down. They wrote something. They said, we scramble, we run around until things break, and then we scramble to fix them. And I was like, oh, that's such a pretty couple lines, like break and scramble. I see what you did there, right? It's clever. I don't know if it's humorous, but it's clever and good. And this idea that we're reacting to problems rather than by just simply adding in a little bit of humor, which we all want to do anyways. And so what I'm trying to do, as I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to make these things into something more than the ill-formed stuff in your head that you're thinking about, but you haven't really worked out thoroughly yet, is that humor and laughter are a part of, a well-balanced mental health diet.
Yeah. It's part of the emotional piece. Like, are you showing up like present? Because you have to be present too, in order to see the humor or to find something humorous, witty, clever. Like, you can't be multitasking and find something. So you really have to be mindful and present, which is also a key piece of good emotional well-being, right? Is that presence and mindfulness.
And it's great for leaders too, because if you're paying attention to something that's going on in your space and you're making jokes with those people, you're reaching out to them as people, right? I want you, this person, to enjoy this, right? Not you, worker, because we don't care if a worker's enjoying themselves. We do care if people enjoy themselves. And that shift, that fundamental shift in frame is so important, right? And this is one of the reasons, again, it's kind of this, this mental health, because we only fix problems, because we only see things that kind of like, here's the pulling of the string, and here's the thing that gets pulled on the end, this very kind of immediate in time consequences or reactions. Like, yeah, but if you just have these things there, whatever the negative pull is, the response is going to be as great because the humor buffers, right? And you see it in emergency situations. You see it like, one of the ones I use with students, people are like, well, you don't have many emergencies because you're a philosophy professor. You're a professor. Like, what emergencies? It's like, you're right. Like, which hand am I going to use to lean on to think might be that's my emergency? But I do advise, and students will often come to me because they've got grades they don't like, or, they've been really good in high school, but here they're struggling in college. And so this is hard for them. And this for them is an emergency, and it's as real as anything else. And I'll bring them into the office and we'll sit down, and I never say, well, okay, don't panic, because when in the history of forever has that really worked? Like, relax. Okay, I'm going to relax right now. Right. And I say, okay, hey, let me pull your stuff up on the computer so I can see where you are, and we can, and I'm doing this kind of as a distraction. I said, while you're waiting, if you want to take a look at my first couple of years of undergraduate transcripts, you're not going to see a lot of vowels there. And everyone stops and they're like, what? Not a lot of O, not a lot of A's. Oh, I see what you did. Oh, and you're a professor now. So and suddenly their brain is no longer focused on the panic. They've tried to sort out this little puzzle that's a joke. And jokes and puzzles are close little, they're close mental cousins. And then we can have a really good conversation. My melanin challenge joke, right, is that one came, I used to do, about 6 or 7 weeks into the semester when I can sense the students want to kind of get at that topic of, you're a white guy teaching at a place where you don't look like most of the people who you work or teach to. And like, explain this to us, because this is atypical and sort of thing. And I used to just, when I could feel it, I would just kind of hop up in front of the room and like, all right, let's talk about the fact that I'm a white guy. And I'd have my hands up, like it was punchy and in your face, and it worked, right? Because it was still goofy and weird. But I don't know what happened. I can't honestly remember where it came out. I said, one day I just said, well, let's talk about the fact that I'm melanin challenged. Mm-hmm. And everyone who hears it, everyone just is like, I see what you did there. And then because they're that playful little goofy melanin challenge phrase is there, their brain is suddenly in this space of enjoyment, of solving a little problem, of getting the humor. And these are all things that lighten that mood, make more levity happen. And then the more serious discussion that happens on the back end of that is so much easier to get into it, because you're coming off not tight, oh, we're going to talk about race in the United States, which is a really difficult topic, because it is. Mm-hmm. Here's this funny way this guy talked about him here, and then we're going to talk about race, right? So everything just, it's like the shoulders drop, that everyone breathes a little more deeply. It's managing emotions, right? How do you do this in such a way that you can get people to relax a little bit so that you can do the harder work and the heavier lifting? And that's one of the bases for the humor as a common good, is that the people that we do politics with, it's better if they're people we can laugh with, because if we think that they're people we can only laugh at, please see current left versus right, mm-hmm. then figuring out how to do the very heavy lifts of politics, where you have to answer and figure out solutions to difficult questions in areas of restricted resources, that's much, much harder when the people that you're working with are the people you laugh at. It's much easier to do it when there are people that you're working with whom you also laugh.
Right. Very fine line, but very different meaning. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
That's really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mike, I want to take the quickest of breaks, and then I want to hear more about your speaking experience, and then I've got a few more questions for you. So we will be right back. And we're back talking with Dr. Mike about all things humor and laughter and joy. And I am so enjoying this conversation. And Mike, I had a question for you. Take a break from the humor stuff, but I'm curious about your public speaking experience. You just talked for an hour on humor and the benefits of humor, did it very well. And obviously, I know you've been doing this research for a while, you've been doing talks for a while, but it's still a great skill. Did you always like public speaking, or did you have to learn to like public speaking?
When I remember, when I was reading the questions you were going to ask, I've never been asked that question. And I can honestly say, I don't know. I don't remember being deeply afraid of it, but I also don't remember being deeply like, oh, that's what I want to do. So a lot of this comes from my ability as a teacher, where I do a lot of what you would consider chalk and talk sort of presentations, because it's philosophy and it's really about discussing ideas. So that's how I approach it. And what I've had to learn the last couple of years where I go and give talks, I've learned that my natural inclination, or I probably the better way to put it, is that my trained inclination is to come at it as an educator would come at it. And I'm going to come to you with as much content, and I am going to jam pack that content and hit as much as I can, because I'm going to dot all my I's and I'm going to cross all my T's, so that there's best practice and the most recent research and meta studies and all this sort of thing. And if I'm going to give a talk to a bunch of academics, sure, that's what I should be doing. But pretty much everybody else, which is going to be everybody else that I talk to, I've started to learn that I need just enough, or I need to say things like, if you're interested in the specifics, reach out to me and I'm more than happy to provide them. But it never looks good on a PowerPoint slide to just have a bibliography, because no one's going to be able to read it. It's like, there's going to be 30 sources, and like, I'm not going to have 6 slides of sourcing because no one's going to read it.
Right.
The challenge that I have started to face, or maybe the challenge I've given to myself, is that what I need to do when I'm talking to the groups is I need to educate, but I also need to inspire. And that's not something that that's the thing that I have avoided the most, mostly because I don't want to be seen personally, and something in my kind of makeup, I don't want to be an inspirational speaker, because I've always seen inspirational speakers as all show and no go, and I want to be all go and no show. And so what I'm trying to do is say, you've got the go, Mikey, you've done all this stuff, you check the boxes, you've got it, now go out there and inspire people. And it's not something that I'm not inclined to do it for a whole variety of reasons, both as an academic and my family upbringing and all, we don't want to do therapy sorts of stuff, where that sort of thing has never been, I just want to get to the facts of the matter and do the things and like, hey, it's right, come learn. But it just doesn't seem to be as effective. And I know that when I do some more of these playful, fun, inspiring things, people get more out of it. So the thing that I have been doing recently is trying to find ways to tell the stories that are backed with the content and the academic and the research stuff, but in such a way that you're not getting lost, right, in a footnote or something like that. And when I was writing the Putting Humor to Work book, I was contacted by a publisher, and they said, hey, we saw this chapter that you wrote. We think you could kind of broaden it and extend it to write this book, and it's to teach people about recent, advances in the research relative to this topic. And I was like, sure, I could do that. Short side note, don't write 2 books at once. It was incredibly stupid and taxing, and I was exhausted, but it's done, and live and learn. But what I started doing with that, I was like, oh, well, you want me to do basically lit review. And I got probably 2 chapters into it, and I was like, well, wait a second. With the internet and some basic level search skills, you can go do all of this lit search yourself. You don't need me. And so what I started to do with the chapters is I started to say, what you need from me as a person who's more in touch with this content is you need some way to sort it in this kind of thematic sort of way. And so what I started doing is I'm like, look, we're going to go through it, but here we're going to go through it through the lens of this theme or the lens of this topic. And that has helped me think a little bit more about when I present and when I give talks in public about what I'm going to do and what do you as the audience in this particular space need. So one thing that there's a guy named Drew Tarvin who does this sort of work too.
Yeah.
He told me, he's like, look, you're going to be talking about humor. And if you don't have them laughing within the first 2 minutes, and you don't have them laugh 2 or 3 times every 6 minutes, you're going to lose them, because the expectation is funny. Unless you do something very formal and forceful to say, we're not doing jokes right now. We're doing, this is going to be a little heavier, right? And my natural inclination as a person, because I'm so informal, is that I'm very rarely in that kind of heavy space. Like I've never found it particularly useful. But he was like, you got to know this going into it, or else they're going to come away and they won't know why they're not as thrilled about it. But that's going to be the reason why.
His TED Talk or TEDx talk came up after yours. So when I was watching your TED Talk, I was like, oh, and I know his name too. And but his is longer. I think it was in the years of the 20-minute TED Talks. And it was great. And I mean, he definitely fulfilled that. And that's a very stand-up comic, like every 6 minutes, like need to have, that's very like precise way of thinking, because he is a stand-up comic too.
And he's an engineer, right? Like he's like, no, we're hitting. And so the thing, like I've taken a couple of stand-up classes and done some improv. And my biggest problem with doing stand-up is that I tell stories that are kind of funny. And so if I really wanted to do stand-up and actually get my tight 5, I said the challenge for me is going to have to come up with 3 to 4 to 5 jokes that I can run through each minute, right? Where it's, and I know I could do it, but the amount of work to get there, I just don't know if I have the time or the inclination to do that amount of work. Because I found that I've written some jokes with other people, and I have found that I have so much fun writing jokes with other people. Like I geek out. And I was talking, I ran into a comic and we were just kind of chit-chatting back and forth. And I went through a couple of my jokes. He said, oh, that was great. I was like, take it, use it, have fun with it, man. I'm like, I'm not making any money off this thing. And like, I could probably be super happy by just like, playing around and goofing around with jokes. And that would probably make me as happy as I need to be. But yeah, like presenting, speaking to people, and doing this sort of work where you have a limited amount of time to get them to pay attention, to get them to learn. It's a skill, right? And it's not even one like you're going to be able to read a book and figure it out. Like you have to take who you are and how you approach the material, go out there and run through a couple, and then figure out, oh, these are my strengths and this is how I'm going to work. Because, there are things that I've, never had to deal with in a classroom because that's my space. But when I'm out giving a talk in the public, it's much more of yes, they're there to talk to me, but like they're not bound by the same unwritten rules that we have in a classroom. And I just wouldn't pay attention to them, right? Because so it's been interesting and fun. And part of me was like, well, you've done all the work and you can be lazy and not do this. And then the other part of me is like, no, go do it right. Like pay attention and shift your focus, because these are different things. And yeah. And if you have to be 6 minutes of, 3 jokes in 6 minutes, then make sure that you're hitting those marks. Right. It's fun. It's a challenge, but if I was probably, unlimited wealthy, I probably, I wouldn't be doing any of this. I'd be reading books, and like you couldn't see behind me anything but stacks of books ready to fall on me is probably where I'd be.
That sounds lovely. But you would actually read the books, right? You wouldn't just stack them. You would read them.
No, I've got a couple stacks over here, but like I'm going with the Japanese on this one. Like this isn't stuff. This isn't hoarding. This is what do they call it? Like, it's like you're stockpiling future joy, because you're going to get to that book. Yeah, I'm like, I'm gonna go with that. I'm stockpiling future joy.
I like to call it shelfmosis, because
shelfmosis. That's great.
Yes. Because if I have the book but haven't read it, I'm still like gleaning something from it because I've purchased it, right?
Right. And I mean, and then the deep dark secret that you're going to get to that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, but I will purchase your book and read it. I will.
And if I get down to Charlotte anytime soon, I'll sign it for you.
Oh, yes. Perfect. I love that. Well, and just going back to one phrase you used, all go and no show, or all show and no go, to repeat what you said, a little yes and here. Can you, and I think you could, be all go and show, like you could combine them as a speaker, which I think you did, at least in the webinar. And I know it's a challenge. You're saying it's a challenge for you, but you can be both go and show as a speaker.
And you can be, and you have to be, right? The thing that has been my most difficult challenge is what I really want to do is be like, here's the evidence. If you look at this evidence, it clearly says this. Are we finished? Great. We're going to move on now. And it just doesn't work that way. Like, because so much of me wants it to, and this is the other thing. I don't want it to be about me. I want this message.
Not.
Right.
Yeah.
I want this message to resonate, not because I said it, but because the message itself is right. And again, lots of therapy probably behind all of that. But, but this, where I become the message, right? And this is why I get so kind of knee-jerk grumpy about influencers, right? They, there's some bit about, I don't want some fitness influencer who's 22, no kids, no real job to tell me, oh yeah, go ahead. You can drop these things. You can go to the gym for 4 hours a day. Yeah, you can. I can't. I have crap knees and three children and a job and a mortgage to meet. And you don't seem to have all these problems. So great for you. But there's that fantasy about wanting to look like that fitness influencer and what I'm trying to do is answer that question or have that go through inspiration. And honestly, I'm making this one up as I go. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I know that's my goal. I have not thought terribly hard about doing it or how you would do it. I mean, honestly, probably this is as much as I've spoken about it because it's been
I appreciate that.
It's been a recent sort of thing. And so like, hey, let me switch it on you. You're the one doing this sort of thing. You're teaching the speakers. Hey, let me shut up for a little bit. And like, I'll get some cool stuff for you. But like, I also, for me, I want to, I learn better from the doing of it, right? Like it's hard for me to kind of think about how would you behave to be inspirational? And I'm like, for me, that's why I hate doing online classes. I can't look at my students and I can't see them, or I can't be like, you clearly didn't get what I just said here. Your face is telling me that I need to step back and reintroduce this idea in a totally different way. Or I need to simply look at you and say, what are you missing? And how can I help you get this? Right. And it's very hard in a digital environment to get that sort of feedback because, people will be, it's much easier to look at your phone or be distracted, or it also feels weird, right? Because I'm like, oh, so what are you saying? And then there's this momentary pause where everyone's like, something bad just happened. Did we just lose feed or, oh, no. Right. And so, and it tightens us up. Right. So yeah, like I hear, like if it's totally worth it to you at the end of this, I'd love to hear things about that inspiration stuff. Cause it's just it has not been something that I have actively gone after. It's actually been something that I have actively avoided because of my academic background. But I know that if I want to do this stuff better, I've got the humor bit. I'm funny. I've got the content. I just need to know how to package it up in such a way that gets people over. It's cool, just not that cool.
Well, yeah. And as you're talking, it reminds me of a post I saw recently. Someone was posting about a conference and they were looking for speakers as like call for proposals. And like, we want research-based, evidence and, basically just like science-based. And what they said is, we do not want motivational fluff. And I was like, oh, I hadn't heard that phrase, motivational fluff. And then I got like all in my head. I'm like, do I do motivational fluff? Like, oh no, like it just sounds so icky, right? And I don't think anyone who does motivational fluff would even say that they do. And I don't know. So it's like such an interesting term. Like, do people walk away going, that was just motivational fluff? Because I think you are inspired. And then maybe later on, you're like, well, that was kind of fluff. I don't know. Anyway, it's like I had a whole spiral over that term too.
Well, I mean, and it's hard, right? Because there are people who will get you, like a preacher who can get you moving, but then
right. Okay.
like you can, and I should say this to be fair, the picture in my head is the preacher who gets everyone going, but there's something, and this is not in any way to say that all preachers are like this. In fact, I imagine most of them are not. But like, how can I get you in that kind of that excited, inspired state? But then when that emotional wave kind of ebbs off of that high, what are the things you can take away from what I'm giving you, right? So I can do that. I'm less good at getting you into that space. I can get you to laugh and I can get you to enjoy humor, but there's something different between enjoying it, but then being inspired and enjoying it. And that's that part where I'm like, and I really was, when I gave the talk to y'all through the wellbeing think tank, that was, I had in August given a talk to medical professionals as part of a symposium on why they should be using humor in medical care. And the two speakers who flanked me, we all knew each other. They did a lot more personal story and a lot more kind of like inspire sort of thing. And then I was the guy who kind of came in with the, funny, but here's the content, right? Not that they didn't do that, but like our focuses were kind of shifted in those directions. And at the end of it, I realized that, yes, what I needed to, like, I've got to figure out ways to get people, and the word that just hit me was inspired. And it's not an emotional space that I'm comfortable playing around in, again, for all sorts of reasons, but it seems to be that's the thing that needs to happen, because then people will take the message and do things with it.
Yeah. So a few ideas for you. And I can't remember if you did this in the webinar or not, but having time for reflection goes such a long way, and you don't have to say anything in that reflection piece. Like, you can have a slide on, like, okay, so I talked about humor and the benefits of humor, and like, what's something you're laughing at? Or you could even infuse, if depending on the time, it's like, have them break out into groups and share and connect with each other. It's like, what is something that you've laughed at recently, or something like really made you belly laugh? Or on the flip side, something small that has brought joy and laughter and humor to your life, and share that with someone next to you. And then you could bring the group back. So that's kind of my facilitator's hat, because I'm a much better facilitator than like a keynoter person. So I love to bring the audience into it. I know you get asked to do a lot of talks. I mean, this is still a way to infuse engagement, right? And you can do this online, have people share in the chat, but letting the audience have a chance to talk and reflect. Reflection is huge, because they don't just hear what you said then and there and like, oh, I'm inspired. That reflection piece actually brings it away. And that's like the key takeaways. Now, my problem is I talk too much, and then we get to the end and I'm like, oh, we didn't have time to do the 3 to 5 minute reflection piece. That is super important. So we rush it and we say, we're out of time, but, as your takeaway, think about these things that you can reflect on. And no one's going to really spend the time after to do it. So really, if you can take the time, the 3 to 5 minutes of silence, and yes, people will be like, the ones who weren't paying attention will be like, what's wrong? Or he's not talking. Is that what happened? Right? But it's actually silence for them to reflect, write down, or think what they can do with this message. Like, okay, so the key piece for work is like, humor makes you more approachable. I'm a leader at work. Am I being truly approachable? And like, how can I do that? And maybe I don't have the answers, but how can I research how to do that? Or do I want to create that space? Like, does that make me uncomfortable? So your message can spark a whole lot of things, but if it's rushed or you run out of time, it's, you don't get that reflective piece of it.
Right, and they can't take the time to compile it while they're inspired.
Exactly. So you're like, I'm inspired, but I can't remember why. And then they leave and go about their day and get like attacked by emails and the to-do list, and they've forgotten. They remember that it was a joyful presentation and it was humorous and you were awesome. But like, what were the key takeaways, that the strategies that they can do, them personally can do And I think that gets rushed. I'm guilty of it too. That gets rushed at the end. And it's actually probably one of the more important pieces. It's like, I've given you all the facts and research. Now, what do you personally do with it?
I mean, you're hitting it right on the head, because this is the thing that happens with my classes, right? When I'm in face-to-face, it's like I want to get through all that content, but you're pouring, there's only so much that sponge can take up, right? And
right.
Our brains, and the analogy fails about brain and sponge, because the brain has to have time to process and organize and reorganize that content so that it can make, so that it can incorporate or adjust that content. And in a TED Talk, well, everyone's leaving after the TED Talk, or we're moving to the next TED Talk, or in class, you're going to the next class, or you're going to get lunch, but you're breaking it, and, you're not. So probably, I have the opportunity. We're changing learning management systems from Blackboard to Canvas next year. And over the next semester, I was like, well, I could look at this as a horrible thing because it's going to be annoying, and I got to learn a new system, and no one likes learning new systems because we're good with what we got. Or I could look at this as a way to revamp what I'm doing. So I'm going to look at it in the second way and revamp what I'm doing, because I'm getting bored with it. And if I'm bored with it, that comes off. And, it's simple reframing, but the thing that I've always resisted when I've been taught to teach, and I don't resist it because I don't like it. That's not the thing. I just resist it because I'm like, we have so much to cover. I got to get it all in. Right. And especially like if someone's paying me, like I've heard some of the fees that speakers get paid to come in and talk for an hour. And I'm like, I mean, I'll take the money. Don't get me wrong. But I also feel like my educational kind of, self and my moral self is like, you need 3 times what I can give you just to make myself feel like not a schmuck for, taking advantage of you. Right. I remember when I was first told, they're like, you have 2 books. And I was like, yeah, they're like, this is your minimum. And I'm like, what? I was like, I could do 5 of those in a year, 5. Right. And I make what I make now. Then that's 5 hours worth of work. Plus, I don't know, 10 hours of travel. Come on, man. Like, how is it?
But it's, I guess, it's that motivational fluff, but it's more, it's more than that, because they've figured out a way, these really like high level keynoters, because it's the keynoters making this, that I truly believe the real work is done in the workshops. It's done in the classes. Yeah. In like the time spent learning the material and applying it. And in keynotes, like you don't get a huge chance to apply. And so, you know so much about applying this work. So then, like, how can you help people to apply this to their lives? That's the key piece of it. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable and allowing me to put my coaching hat on too. I hope that was helpful.
Oh, no. One thing that you're welcome. Let me do that one. And thank you. Right. Because this is all part of like this kind of like, how do I do this work? And, because I don't know the answers to these questions. And I know, one of the most important things that we can do is like, do you know? Great. Let's talk. Let's chat. Like, there's no need anymore with the intelligence that most people have and the experiences they have that we can know everything. In fact, we don't have the time or the energy to do it. We have to both ethically and epistemically rely on the people around us to do, to lift those other loads, because the world is just far too complicated. And I don't know why some people get so bent out of shape when they have to listen to an expert. I'm like, oh my God, I love listening to an expert. Like, that's yay. Look at all the work that they've done that I don't have to do. So that, this idea of, and just helping me to think about, and just to point out, like, give them space to breathe and work on this. And I'm like, yeah. And I know I'm going to start doing that on my Tuesday, Thursday classes. I was like, y'all need to get used to, and I need to get used to 3 minutes of silence, because I get antsy. Like, we're not doing anything. No, 3 minutes of silence, or however much we need for y'all to kind of compile this and then come back so that, something's taken from this. Right.
Well, and it can, there can be many different methods too. Like I'm a big connection person. So I like when a person says, let's break out into groups so you all can chat. Other people go, oh my God, that's my worst nightmare, right? They're like, oh, they didn't tell me we were going to do breakout. I thought I could just sit back and relax. They're going to talk to people. So you have to do a mixture of both, like the silence, reflective, writing, thinking piece, and the connection piece. Because sometimes when you do talk to people, you learn something about them, but then that reminds you, oh, I have that problem too. And you realize my problem isn't solo, like other people are experiencing this too. So there are many different methods to be used for the reflection piece, but it often gets skipped, unfortunately. And so the way that I arrange my presentations is how I would like to see them as an audience member. Like I want audience engagement. Yes, like obviously if it's an expert, like I want to hear what they know, but I still want some audience engagement pieced in. And I find people are getting better at it, but sometimes they force it too much, or it's too little. So finding the balance that works for you and your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things people are like, well, how do you do humor in a virtual environment? I'm like, oh, yeah. God, like you've now taken away probably a good 75% of how we communicate humor by putting us on. I said, because one of the tells that you've made a joke or you're trying to be funny is pausing, because you're allowing the brain to go, oh, I see what you did there. Right. Mm-hmm. But when we encounter a pause where everything just drops out online, our initial reaction is, did someone lose a feed? Or someone muted? Like our initial response is suddenly something's wrong, which kicks us into a different mode of we're troubleshooting rather than trying to put the puzzle together. Right. Yeah. And I said, and it's just like, it's just hard. I mean, you can do it, but you've got to be there. You have to now treat it more like you're doing comedy. You're like, this is now this is a presentation in which you have humor. And so what I tend to do is, and you saw it with the slides, is that the slides have visual humor in them, right? Yes. Because that one's easy to work. It allows the audience to do all the work. They just have to see it or not see it and pay attention to it, right? Some of them are subtle. Some of them are, in your face. But like if you're doing visual, if you're doing stuff online, that's your best bet, right? Because they're not relying on any behavioral cues from you. They're just relying on them, taking it in, and it's there, right? It's unlikely that you're going to lose that feed. Because if you do, then, probably everything is screwed up and you're going to have to come back and do it again anyway.
What I liked about your style in watching the webinar piece, the online piece of it, is it was subtle. Like right off the bat, like you made some kind of subtle jokes and you don't call attention. You're like, do you see what I did there? You see the joke? Like it's subtle delivery. And also the slides had subtle humor. And so I was like, oh, I need to pay attention to this. Like there's some good stuff in there that like, yeah, he might not call it, but it's really humorous if you're present and mindful. So it's like, hey, pay attention, because you're going to miss some good stuff if you're not.
And so in the book, they putting humor to work. So when they asked me about the book, I kind of came up with this horrible working title. It was like, laughter, work, humor, and communication, more words. And it was just awful. Like, and I was just like, and I knew, I told the managing editor, I was like, this is a horrible title. It's awful. I said, but right now I'm so creatively drained. I'm just adding this as a thing to try and solve. I'm just not going to be able to do. And I know you have people who do PR type stuff and I said, so if y'all could help me, and this was, a month into the process. And so several months later, I'm like, here's the draft. What do you all think? And she said, oh, we all went through it. We sent it out to a couple of reviewers. It was great, but everyone has said that the title is awful. I was like, I know. Remember that discussion where I said it was an awful title? And like, I really need you all to help me here. I said, I can't say this more consistently. I need your help because I got nothing. I am so tired. And she said, well, we're sitting around and we came up with putting humor to work. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I was like,
thank you.
Like, that is so good. But the book, if the titles of the chapters are all plays on children's books titles. So there's laugh a boom boom. There's
Oh, nice.
the horrible, no good, very bad joke, right? Ethical problems with humor, right? And I table of contents, and there's an asterisk, and then at the bottom of the table of contents, the asterisk says, "Hey, look, you may have noticed that all of the titles are plays on children's books titles. I did that to model the behavior that you can do serious work while also having fun at the same time. That these are not mutually exclusive." And so, yeah, that's like one of the reasons in the PowerPoint is I want to model that behavior. Like what you are seeing is someone actually doing what they're talking about live.
I love that about the children's titles, because I think we're just now dipping our toes in the children's books. Like my daughter loves Fox and Socks. I read Fox and Socks about 10 times a day. I'm going to have that memorized very soon. I have some pages memorized already. And yeah, I'm going to be really good at Fox and Socks in a little bit. So I love the children's titles callback. Question for you, Mike, kind of related, not related, but you mentioned this in your webinar, objections to your work and how play and humor is seen as frivolous, or it's like, it's a tough sell. And like, how do you get people to, like, they hear it, they think it's cool, they see that you got books, but then like hiring's a different story. So like, how do you make that sell, or like get the word? $1 million question, right? Because that's what I want to know too.
If I had the answer, hey, I just want to thank you for putting your finger right on the sore spot in my whole the weak link. Just zero it in there and play with it, right? And like I say that kind of teasingly, jokingly, right? But It's true. Like this is one of the other philosophical worries that I have, is that there is an assumption that somehow work and play and laughter and seriousness are opposites, that they're like, if you have one, you cannot have the other. And I know from experience, and all of us know from experience, that when there is an adequate level of laughter and or humor in your day-to-day life, it is like salt to the dish, right? It brings and accentuates everything. And so one of the ways that I get around that objection is that I point that out. I said, you've been in spaces where there is no laughter, where there's very little humor. You wouldn't want to go back. You would, in fact, take a pay cut to be in a space that has laughter and humor. And I've met people who have said that, like, oh yeah, I didn't make as much money, but my life was so much fundamentally better than when I was working in this place that didn't have it. And we know this is so, like, and we have plenty of evidence as to why this particular thought is so corrosive. Look at how much disengagement that we have. And it's driven because people realize that all that management is tending to look at is how we can make things more efficient, more effective, more cost effective, and these sorts of things. And you're squeezing out that which makes it human. And this is a consistent complaint from workers for centuries. I'm not saying anything new here, but what I am trying to get you to focus on is that there's research now, plenty of good, solid research that shows that if you actually want to have more resilience, lower healthcare costs, more healthful workers, then you need this in your space. And let's just forget for a moment that people just enjoy it more. Like, that's not a hard sell, but I run into this brick wall every time. And literally from my joke about, I mean, one thing that I did is I took the whole, complaint about cool, not so cool, and I turned it into one part of my pitch. Because years ago, when I don't know if I told the story in the webinar or not, but
you did. Please tell it again. Yeah.
So I was doing one of those entrepreneurship things through a chamber of commerce. Localities will have these things for new business.
Nice.
And I was doing like the 6-week, the 8-week, and I done a couple of them. This was maybe the second or third. And it was really helpful. And we have to go do our pitch to the local professionals who were going to judge you. And I didn't win, but everyone came to me and said, you had the best presentation. And I'm like, well, that's not surprising because I'm a professor and I have talk for a living. So I can work a crowd. Like, we know that. And one guy said, come back and tell me about what you're doing. And I was talking about teaching people and showing companies and organizations and individuals how to incorporate more humor and laughter into their workspaces and their work organizations and that sort of thing. And then it has all these benefits. And he just started saying, and I remember him, he's like, hey, that's really cool. You're right. We do not have enough laughter and humor in our day. Like, that is so cool. And I looked at him and I said, cool enough to hire me? And his face just broke. Like, you could see every part of him just tighten up, and like he couldn't imagine going to his boss and saying, I'm gonna bring this guy in who's gonna talk about jokes and we're gonna pay him money. And he just, like, all of that happened really quickly in his brain, and he just went, not that cool. And I just and I remember going to the people in the incubator, and I said, you told us that what we need to do is we need to identify a problem. We need to then show successfully how we are going to solve that problem. You have to get them to agree that it is a problem, and then agree that you're the right person for it. So not only am I humorous, I practice what I preach, I also have all the background, right? Like there aren't many people out there with as much experience as I have doing
Absolutely.
I said, and then they said no. And all I can, and the only thing I can do is laugh at that, right? Because then there's something else going on, right? Because what they say in your entrepreneurship class is like, highlight a problem, solve it, show how you're the person to solve it, get paid. I said, I did all four. I'm not getting paid. How do we fix?
I did the homework. I did the work. I showed up to class.
I did all the things, right?
Where's my?
I need that paycheck. I have a bad addiction to Oriental rugs that my wife hates, but like I need to go get another one because I have a problem. And I of course, this is how I deal with all right. I bring up all this weirdness and all this goofiness, and I cloak it all in humor so that we can laugh at the thing, but then not lose track of the issue that, because we have this view that laughter and humor are the opposites of work and seriousness, that obviously this is something frivolous or this is some sort of luxury, and it's not a luxury. It's, if I'm right, and I think that I am, or I wouldn't have said it, if it's part of kind of a well-balanced mental health diet, then you got to have this in here. And if you don't have it in here, you know what the problems are. People are burned out, they're disengaged, and we know how much that costs. Like, we've got plenty of information, plenty of research that shows how bad this is. And let's just stop for a minute and realize and ask ourselves, do you want to be in that space where there's no humor and laughter? No. And why would the people who work with and for you? It ain't hard. Like, look at what I have done for this hour or this workshop where I have dropped in humor, where I've used it in my writings. This is not hard. You may not have a particular sense of humor that everyone likes, but you can find ways to do this. That's the best. That's the best that I have. Right. But what I lack right now is kind of I lack the intensity of getting that message out there. And social media requires that you do this stuff, 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 times a day. And I got a job, and my wife used to be a TV news producer, and, she wrote scripts, right? And she knew a good bit about, lighting, but you had a person and persons who went out on air and read scripts that she wrote, who were filmed, recorded by people who were recording them, who didn't write the scripts, right?
Exactly.
And then you had reporters who went out and so now, because of social media, it is literally an army of one. I mean, you're going to have to edit this, right? There was a producer who edited this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And
I do pay somebody to edit my stuff.
but see, now you have to pay for it. Whereas, the news company
exactly
did this as part of the cost of the product. And this is why I understand why that lady you talked about, who was doing her, super low tech version of, I'm just going to record it. I'm going to snip the back ends and the front ends, and you get the whole puddle of consciousness right there. Yeah, I get that, because me being me, it shouldn't be that difficult. It shouldn't be that demanding. And we should hire people to do those sorts of things, because that's what we're training them to do. But because capitalism, we're finding ways to not do that stuff. And it makes me sad. So I don't know. These are the challenges that I face as I figure this out, because I don't want it to be like a passion project, or what did someone else say? Vanity project. Like I haven't heard that. You wrote the book and you go out there because you just want to, look at yourself or check out your nails. And I'm like, but if it was ever that, I could never do it. My sensibilities are such that
that's icky.
Right. It's bad. Like, this is a good product. The ideas and the content that I'm selling are great. It's just really hard to get a company to say, we're going to spend a couple $1,000s to bring in a guy and we're going to talk about jokes. Like one of the ones for brainstorming. So I'm like, you should never brainstorm ever.
Okay. Tell me more.
Okay.
Because I like yes and brainstorming. So tell me.
So that's different, right? That's yes and brainstorming circumvents the criticism I'm about to give you. When you go into a corporate situation where they say we need people to be creative, we need brains, everyone starts going, we need creativity, and suddenly they focus and everything narrows and tightens, right? Well, go make jokes about the thing that you want to be creative about. Make bad jokes, make awful jokes. What are jokes based on? Putting things together in weird ways, right? Now, let them do that for an hour. Do it for an hour. And then don't ask anyone for any sort of creative ideas until the next day or the day after. And what is your brain going to do with all those wonderful new connections it's making? It's going to light on something that's creative because you opened it up. Instead of saying we need you to be creative, we pulled it out and said, yes, and, where could I go with this, right? And understand that 90% of the where I could have go with it responses are going to be useless. But one of them will be useful. It will be worth pursuing because it's what brains do when they're working things together. Jokes, I could tell you a joke about Etruscans, but you wouldn't have a fucking clue what it's about because, like, Etruscans, like, who the hell jokes about them? Right. A classicist doesn't get it.
I'm
right?
making a face. I don't know.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, those are people? Like, is there a part of the globe? No, they were the ones that the Romans killed off in the Italian peninsula. Just, I'm a classics dork, so just FYI. But yes, and is designed precisely to take what they're doing and go with it and go, the whole mindset there is to go. When you're saying be creative and brainstorm, it's like, and suddenly everything just goes right in. And it kills it. It kills it. So don't just make jokes and understand that you're not looking for 90 minutes from now, some creative ideas. You're looking for this for like 2 or 3 days. And then someone's going to have something pop up and just write them down. Right.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. It's a long form. Yes. And right. Because your brain, I just recently saw, I guess, in the twilight hours of the morning, right around between 4 and 6, as you're kind of coming out of deep sleep, you get really good dreams. So I'm like, don't brainstorm, make jokes, literally make fun of. And I said, and understand that when you're making fun of, you're not to judge them on how they're making fun of or anything like that. You just want people to start shocking that brain to go and not to, I hate to say it, think outside the box. You want it to create differing connections, right? You want it to see things from a different way, because that's where creativity can't be completely new or no one would understand it. It has to be within the realm. So good jokes, I have an article on what makes a bad joke, and not ethically bad, but when does, and not because you're too tired to get it or you're sad or whatever. You get that it's a joke. You understand that they're trying to, but it's just not achieving jokiness.
Just flopped.
Yeah, it's flopped. But what makes it for bad jokes? And I'm like, if the conceptual relationship is too close, you get it. It's like a knock-knock joke, right?
Right.
When it tells you a knock-knock joke, you're trying to figure out what the wordplay is, right? And if it's too close there, it's not a joke because you get it. You know what's coming. But if it's too far away, then you're just like, huh? I don't get there are some really weird, one of my favorite jokes written by another humor researcher. He says, what's the difference between a parrot? Nothing.
Wait.
The left side is exactly like the right side, only more so. It's none of it makes sense in any possible way, right? Right. Because your brain, the questions sound like a question, but a difference between a parrot. The parrot's one. It's one.
Right.
You have to have two things, right? And then nothing. Well, then what the hell did you ask me? The left side's just like the right side, only more so than it's not like the right side. It's just this constant.
I didn't know if I misheard you. I was like, wait,
right,
like a parrot.
Yeah, like what is? Yes, right. That's one of my favorite jokes because
it sounds like a kid's joke or something. Like
it's just
something
bizarre.
A kid would come up with.
Right. It's just bizarre, right? And I love it because every time I play around with that joke or I think about it, I'm like, none of it makes sense. It can't make none of like the whole structure of the joke is absurd. And I just like it because it's so goofy. A 12-year-old was telling this joke. His mom wanted me, they heard that I'd studied humor. His mom said, you tell Dr. Cundall that joke. And she wanted me to shake my finger at him and say, oh, it was a bad joke, like a morally bad joke. So I'm like, whatever, okay. And the kid, and he's like 12, and he's like, and his dad's there, and his dad apparently has never heard this joke. So his dad, I said, okay, what's the joke? He said, and he's like, well, oh, okay, I remember, Mom, okay. And he gets where he said, why did Timmy drop his ice cream cone? He got hit by a bus. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Not Timmy.
No. He's got some dark sense of humor.
And everybody just started laughing like that, right? Where, oh, this is deeply dark and weird and confusing. But like I pointed out to his mom, and I know you want me to say like that's bad. I'm like, but if you think about the construction of those two jokes overall, that's really good. The first one isn't a joke; it's an anti-joke because there's nothing in the punchline that comes back. Like there's no play. It just hits. And I said, and then he makes a knock knock joke funny, which is, that's a thing. So
it's hard to do.
I'm like, it's hard to do. So like, and he's 12, so he didn't make this up. So I don't know where he got it, but it's a good, like, those are good jokes. Right. And yeah. And I love, and everyone's like, oh, this is just kind of dark. I'm like, yeah, it is. But like, there's no Timmy who dropped his ice cream cone. There's no, like, it's just a dark joke. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait to see the jokes that my child comes up with when she gets to that stage, because that will be fun.
Oh yeah, it's just gonna be like, I remember one of the ones that like our oldest did was like, it was some sort of nursery rhyme. It was like, twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, cat, and then he would just laugh. Because it's just simple,
shocking,
right? It's just an interruption, right? But to him, it's just beautiful, right? Because it's simple language jokes. I don't know if you know this, but the Navajo tribe, the Dayna tribe, they celebrate for the child's first real laugh as their kind of entry into being fully human, right? They're now a real person, because when they're laughing at something. And not in the way that like, and I'm sure you remember, like your daughter would probably laugh, but you could tell she was just laughing kind of as a reflex, versus now she's probably showing like she's laughing at something, like she's recognizing. And it's like crack, right? Like you hear it, you're like, oh, do that more.
Oh my God. I will keep doing the thing that she laughs at just to get those big laughs.
Right. And they've shown that in women, even in women who haven't had children, infant laughter will rewire your brain. But I mean, I always tell my students, it's like, why are children's laughs so, I mean, if you need a quick hit of dopamine, go type in infant laughter in YouTube and watch 30 seconds and you'll be way up. And they're like, I said, why? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, why is it so attractive to us? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what does a baby need first and foremost?
Love.
It needs an adult. It needs an adult to pay attention to it. Because if it doesn't get paid attention to, it dies. So you better find a way to hotwire that brain into going, yes, please. And what's the second thing? What's the second vocalization that all infants make? The first one is crying, and laughter is the second thing. It's before language. That's how evolutionarily deep laughter is. And they're like, so basically they're just hotwiring our brains to make us take care of them. I'm like, yep, I was like, because do you realize how expensive it is to take care of kids, both monetarily and energetically? Like, like if they were cars, you would never buy them.
Those manipulative little monsters. They know exactly what they're doing.
Because nature knew like the only way to keep you engaged is to make your brain go, more, please.
And make them super cute too.
Yep.
So you're like, okay, well, at least you're cute.
Yeah, at least you're cute. I mean, you're pooping on me, but you're cute.
Oh my gosh. Mike, so much fun stuff. And honestly, I appreciate the humor, the laughter. I haven't been looking at my video and I'm like, it's getting dark here because it's like 5 o'clock now. And I'm like, I should have turned the light on. But you know what? That's a good conversation when you're like, oh, wow, we just kept going. That was amazing.
Yep.
All right, Mike, I one last question for you.
Sure.
As people have enjoyed this conversation and they want to follow you and follow the journey, and as you're getting booked and paid for these speaking gigs, they want to follow it. So where and how can our listeners find out more about you?
I'm on some social medias. I have a Substack. If you look up Dr. Mike in humor, Mike Cundall Substack humor, you can find it. I'm slowly building my base of readers and subscribers. There's a free level, and of course, there's the paid level subscriber because that's how Substack works. Mirth Management is my website, www.mirthmanagement.co, because I wasn't going to spend $1,000 to get the extra M on that one.
Yeah,
and yeah, and then I think just personally, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, but that's not really specifically devoted to humor. I tried to start Mirth Management Instagram, but it would have been again the amount of posting that I would need to do. I can do what I can relative, and I do a lot. I prefer writing. I think I might do some videos. There's a YouTuber whose name's Rick Beato who used to do this thing called "What Makes This Song Great," and he would analyze the musical structure of them. Which, if you like music theory, it's an interesting thing, and I don't like it all that much, but it's interesting to listen to him. And so I was like, well, I want to do stuff like what makes this sketch so funny, right?
That's a great one. Yeah, like why is this funny to us? Or like, yeah. That's because they ask us that a lot in improv. Like that comes up a lot in the classes. Is like, why is this funny? Like, what made this funny to you? And it's such a good question because sometimes we laugh and we're like, I don't know, it just was.
And the basic thing of any sort of funny is some sort of incongruity, some sort of conceptual mismatch, and it just depends on what mismatch you got, right? That's going on there. There was this. I'm blanking on his name. He's a comedian out of New York, and he has this whole bit. He's this 5-minute bit on. He goes, "You can't talk to a drunk woman," and then it's just a series of act outs, right? Where he does, and he's the hand and the neck and all this sort of thing, and the drunk talk, and there's this small bit within it, and then she starts to ramble, and it's a babbling, and it's complete gibberish babbling. But then he quickly goes, blah blah blah, blah Obama, blah 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 blah. And right there, the entire audience laughs more when they hear Obama. And I'm like, because amidst the babble, which is supposed to be nonsensical, there's something you recognize that's not nonsensical, right? Which within the comedy is, again, it's a misalignment because it's babble, babble, babble. Oh, this isn't babble, 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 babble. That's why I don't know why people get so pissy about Saturday Night Live's like political comedy, because they'll throw like fart and they'll throw like lowbrow humor in with the highbrow humor. And I'm like, that's just good comedy writing, right? Where you're hitting all those different things.
I think there's a lot of like nostalgia, and people who don't like SNL now have like too much nostalgia. And it's like, go back and watch the ones that you liked. Like they were doing similar, highbrow and lowbrow, but it was just the timing, right? It's like the Dave Chappelle thing, like the timing of it was perfect. And we remember that. I don't know. Maybe there's a nostalgia piece to it too.
Oh, there absolutely is. But one thing I try and do when I encounter new forms of comedy is I try not to go be grumpy old person about it, right? Like, this is in a sense I'm yes-anding the experience. I'm like, okay, what's going on here, and why is this funny? because that's what's interesting. Not that, I don't no one wins any prizes if they're like, oh, this is not as good as, Saturday Night Live in the late 70s. Okay, sure. Right. Whatever. Like, have a laugh and enjoy it.
That all circles back to the first thing you said about like people want to critique and they want to judge. And yeah, then it's like closed off instead of open.
Yeah.
And we will talk about this again. We'll have you on, Mike. I say this for everyone, but for real, like we'll do a part 2 when you're like on the big stage, getting all the gigs. And we'll do a part 2 and be like, how did you get those gigs? And you'll be like, I have a masterclass and it only cost $1,000, $1,099 for this masterclass for you to learn how to get the gigs and to sell humor to people. I got that for you. No, I'm making a joke, but we'll dream big and we'll manifest that.
That's right. We'll do that. And for real, like if you ever have an idea to do some sort of collaborative thing, like I'm already down for it. Like just let me know. And if I can work with you, I'd be thrilled to do it, just because that's where I get my energy from, like that sort of work.
Same. Yeah. The more I can work with people, the better. Because it's more enjoyable because there's more ideas too. If you're solo, it's like, I got ideas, but I could have more if other people were here too. More.
And yeah.
Mike, thank you so much. This has been amazing. So joyful, so mirthful. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And you're welcome. I do look forward to doing it again at some point.
Perfect. We'll talk soon. And thank you for listening to today's episode with Dr. Mike Cundall. Oh my gosh, what a gem. I know I say that with every guest, but for real, every guest is such a gem. And I so loved this conversation. And I'm so appreciative of Mike's time and expertise too, and also vulnerability that he shared, because I was not expecting the questions piece of it or the coaching part or just kind of turning it back to me. And I love that because there's so much fake it till you make it out there. And yes, if we want to be something, we do have to just step into the role sometimes. Like we can't wait for permission all the time or an invite. Sometimes it's just like, take charge and do what you want to do. I get that. But I also love the piece of like what Mike said is like, I love learning from other experts and I love having collaborative conversations. And if you figured out how to do this, I want to learn from you instead of like trying to go at it alone. And I loved the first half of this talk and the second half. I love the improvised moments, like things that we weren't expecting, but they come up because you're present and you're listening. Amazing episode. And I love the humor focus because, I mean, every episode has an improv lens and aspect to it, but I love the specific focus of humor and the benefits of humor and how it shows up in our lives. I mentioned this in the beginning, but I have a Finding Humor and Joy in a Stressful World presentation that I can do. It can be a presentation or a workshop or a webinar. It works really well online, actually. I co-presented the first one with my friend, Jesse Greenfield. We presented it for the Wellness Alliance. And then I've since kind of shifted a few things and made some things my own. But I really like that talk. And it's funny because I never thought I would give a talk like that. I've seen other talks and presentations about humor, and I'm like, ooh, like they're bold, they're brave. Because whenever you're speaking about humor, like Mike said, there is an expectation that you have to be funny. And in my mind, I thought you had to be a stand-up comedian. And now I realize, no, you don't have to be comedically funny. But you just have to be yourself and real. And you do have to infuse some jokes. Like there are expectations that there are jokes and that this is humorous and funny. And so I hope to do that. I get better at it each time, but I really love doing that presentation. It's one of my favorites. And for the really edgy groups, we make the title Finding Humor and Joy in a Stressful Dumpster Fire World. because the world is really, it's a dumpster fire. Let's just be honest. We don't need to sugarcoat it. It is a dumpster fire out there. And as Mike said, we can still find humor and joy in it. Even through the dumpster fire, there is still humor and joy around. I want to ask you, what is something small or big that you've laughed at lately? It could be like LOL laugh, like full on belly laugh, or even something just like super small that was so silly and it made you laugh. Please feel free to share both with me and Mike, because I know we would love to hear it. We love humor and we love silly things. Clearly, we love silly things. So what is that thing that's lighting you up? Please share that. Like, put us in your meme circle, or, people you share funny stuff with. Like, you can add me to that. I love getting funny reels and memes and all the things. So I will gladly be a part of that. So for me, the small thing that's made me laugh lately is, of course, my daughter. Oh my God, she is so silly. I'm laughing at her and with her. Like, she's kind of learning to dance with music, and it's so funny seeing her dance moves. But actually last night, she took a bath and we were reading some books, and she has this book called Christmas Cheer. And we rarely even read the words. It's not a ton of words in it. There are pictures, but there's a dog in it, and she loves dogs. Every time she sees a dog, she goes, dog, 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 big dog, big dog. And she points. And in this book, like, almost every page has a dog on it, but not quite. And so at first we were going through and like pointing at the dog. And then a little game came up where like she would flip a page and be like, who can point to the dog quicker? And my husband was there. We were all three playing, and she got it. Like, she got that we were playing this game of who can point to the dog the quickest. And so she would turn a page and just like instantly point. Even if there wasn't a dog, she'd point. And it was so silly, though. It was so silly, but it was so fun to have a game of it and make something very silly of finding the dog the quickest and like making that the game. So that was really funny to see. And then my big thing that I've been laughing at, or that I've laughed at lately, and I shared this with Mike too when I emailed him to ask him to come on the podcast. I said, you had such a great humorous webinar. I feel the need to share something funny. So I shared the thing that really made me belly laugh recently. And that is Amy Poehler's podcast, Good Hang. It's really great. Like, I love it. The first episode she did with Tina Fey as the guest, but before every guest episode, Amy invites on people who know that guest, and they do a Zoom call and they talk about the guest in a great way. They like talk great behind the guest's back. And Amy asks, like, what questions should I ask this guest, kind of thing. And the first episode, she has 4 guests on to talk about Tina Fey. And Rachel Dratch is one of them, Seth Meyers, Fred Armisen. And Rachel Dratch is just, she is struggling so hard with the headphones. And then it's dark where she's walking. Like, she can't figure out the lighting. She finally gets settled, and then the doorbell rings and her dog barks, and it's just a whole mishap, and it's so funny. And she's dying laughing. Like, she's not just apologizing because she's stumbling and fumbling. She is dying laughing, like can't breathe. And so I'm watching her. I was watching this at the gym. Like, I had Spotify on, and Spotify can play the videos, and I was watching it, and I'm just dying. Like, I'm stretching, warming up for my workout, just giggling and laughing. I will link it to this if you've gotten this far and you want to laugh too. It is so funny. And that has been like the biggest LOL belly laugh I've had in a long time. I've watched it 10 plus times since then. Like, a few months ago, I saw this, watched it over 10 times, and it's just as funny each time. So I encourage you to get those belly laughs, get those small laughs. Every laugh is a win, and really like find something that lights you up, brings you joy, brings you laughter and humor. It does not have to be comedy. It does not have to be the funniest thing in the world. Finding that joy and humor is the human experience. We are meant to find things funny. We get so many benefits from humor. Find your funny, find your humorous, and enjoy it. Thank you again for listening. And if anything came up, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is dayna@improvlyspeaking.com. That's DAYNA at Improvly. That's Improv, speaking.com. You can also reach out to me on Instagram. I'm at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan, and my website is improvlyspeaking.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And with that, I will remind you to say yes and to humor and laughter and joy and all the things that light us up. Say yes and go out and flex your creative thinking. I'll talk to you next time.